Here we go, recording in three, two, and one.
Botany Bay. Botany Bay. Oh shit, we need to leave.
Not the stab I expected. Welcome to episode 253 of Nerdery Murdery.
Big 253. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeff here with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the ups and downs, the good and the bad, the nerd and the murd. Um, I had a couple of or just a few funny things. Well, things to share this morning. I'm sorry. Um, for those that for our listeners right now, we currently, as of today, when we record, have uh, um, expanded our creative juices, if you will, a little bit. I put together a soundtrack from the show, and it's a little compilation of the end music we've been using for the show. It has our theme song, plus some of the end music, and then an original track that when this episode releases will have already been out. But for those back in the past, that the last track on the album doesn't hit till episode 250. But anyway, it's Nerdery Murdery, the soundtrack volume one. And then I just finished Signals and Shadows, which was a or is a prog rock concept or experiment. Basically taking a journey through the show with prog rock instrumentals. I think it's really cool. I like it. 14 songs on those. Both of those are free. They're out there on anywhere you can find music, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, all that. They're out there everywhere, completely free. So go and enjoy those. I had a lot of fun creating those, and hopefully you like those as well. I'll be doing a soundtrack volume two with some of our other end music songs before long. Um, we got a review, and I'm not laughing at the person that gave the review. I'm chuckling because I appreciate the comment, but I'm going to tell you we ain't going to change. This is how we are. Those of you who are regular
What was
listeners,
I haven't even
oh,
seen
I'm
it.
getting
What was
there.
the
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Those of you who listen to our show on a regular basis know this about us. This comment directly reflects how this show was born. It directly reflects. So the review was, where's the topic? 15 minutes in, and the subject of the episode hasn't even been mentioned yet. We got a 1 star on that one. So
Okay, that's
I
fair.
thought it's fair.
That's fair.
It's how we are. We
Hmm.
we do we do a lot of talking, a lot of cross talk before we even get into the episode. Um, that's just us. So I'm sorry that that person didn't like that. I appreciate the comment. But it is what it is. This is who we are. We will always be this way. I don't think we will ever change. Um,
But we have this.
we do, but the window of opportunity for those of you not watching a video. Um, but yeah, we will. The vast majority of our listeners, they like the cross banter before the beginning of the show. I like it. I like opening up. I don't personally like getting in and just digging right in. That's kind of boring to me. Um, so I wanted to share that review. I saw it this morning and I was like, huh, all right. Um, the last thing I had, I was I was doing an experiment. We've done experiments with AI before. We had an episode about AI, and we talked about the experiment where I mentioned a battery and went downstairs and checked my Alexa, and sure enough, there was an ad for a battery sitting there. But I was talking about AI with our friend Chuck, who we've mentioned in many episodes, and we were sitting around talking, and I said, as an example, I said, "Yeah, hey, watch this," and I opened up Chat GPT on my phone, and I said, "Hey, what can you tell me about Chuck?" And the answer was, "You're going to have to be a little more specific than that. Are we talking about Chuck Norris? Are we talking about Chuck blah blah?" And went through all these different Chucks, and I responded with, "No, no, the Chuck from our show." And Chat GPT said, "Oh, Sleepy Chuck." I,
Oh my God. What did
I,
he say?
Chuck?
Yeah.
Oh, he just laughed. It was funny. I mean, it went into a whole thing. It went into a whole thing about Chuck. I here I've got that handy here. I could find that real quick. Who's Chuck? Um, I'll tell you some of the funny things it said.
Oh,
It's
Sleepy Chuck.
oh, I'm sorry. It said, ah, yes, Chuck, the legendary sleepy listener. Um, he said, it says, from what you've mentioned before in context of your podcast, Chuck isn't a public figure or character. He's essentially a running inside joke with your audience. The gag usually works like this: who Chuck is in the show lore. The listener of the podcast frequently referenced when something is slow, calm, or likely to put someone to sleep, used as a humorous benchmark for energy levels in segments or music. Um, how the joke typically lands is something like that would put listeners to sleep, like Chuck. Um, so
Good night,
uh,
Chuck.
yes, it was very funny. Um, and then I told Chuck, I told ChatGPT, I was sitting there with Chuck, and it says, "Oh, got it. Well then, hello, Chuck. I've heard about you. You're the official nerdery and murdery sleep benchmark. If a segment drags, if the music is too soft, if Jeffrey Frog Rock goes into a little too atmospheric, the assumption is Chuck is already asleep."
Oh
Uh,
my God.
it was great. It was great.
Chuck's
Uh,
already asleep.
so no, that was just so funny. I love stuff like that. I love
Uh,
technology. Technology is great.
uh,
So anyway, that's what I had for this episode. I don't think we've hit our 15 minutes before the topic yet, but Zig,
yeah, yeah. I am now in the fifth, or just finished the fifth um draft of my fantasy novel, Fire
yes, sir.
Sign,
Yes, sir.
an Elvish War novel. I think it's almost there. I want a couple of beta readers to take a look at it first. Um, and I'm also working on the monster manual for Ominous.
Ominous, the role-playing game, which we
Yep,
actually made.
which yes,
We
which
do
is
have,
also in beta test right now too.
yes, it is in beta test. I think one group has started.
Hmm.
The other two, I don't think have started yet because they're waiting for people to come back from wherever they are.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, great. I've got the fifth draft of the book. I'm going to be trying to dig through that this week as I can. I've got a busy 2 weeks coming up. Um, but yeah, no, great. I can't wait for that to go to print. Speaking of print, also the Darkwind Paradox Prime Numbers Book Two. I just got the first full round of edits back from my publisher. I'm reviewing it now. I think I'm through page 107, 115 of the review. So hopefully I'm going to be able to finish that review this week. That's why I may be delayed a little bit. I really need to get that done because I wanted to have it out by now in where we are in time. But we're not going to make it. So I need to finish that, get it back to the publisher.
it's my
But I'm
favorite
really
one
excited.
because it has my name in it a
I'm
lot.
sure it does have your name in it a lot. Well, and it's following a pattern. Zig actually came up with this pattern, and it's actually going to fit the progression of the storyline perfectly. The first book is really centered around Primus, hence prime numbers. The second book is very, very much centered around Darkwind. The rest of the books, because I plan six total, will each have a central focus around one of the team: Whisper, Simon, Athena. The last book, and Athena's a big character in the books, because eventually everything will culminate towards that. And so the last book will probably almost be mostly um, directed towards the Athena character. But yeah, that's going to be the theme as it goes through as I finish because I have the entire story arc in my head where it's going to go. It's the filler in between. I got to get everything together on. But anyway, so by the time this episode's out, the Darkwind Paradox will probably be out. Uh,
Nice.
I hope. I've said that before in episodes, and then it wasn't. But I do expect this. This is running a little bit more smoothly this time. which is common for authors. I've heard this all over the place that the first book is messy. It's messy. It's difficult to get out. Everything past that gets progressively easier. So, um, and if and also I do have a subscriber list you can find on on the Prime Numbers Facebook page, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want free short stories about the world of Ominous, they're there. Um, may eventually put some snippets from the RPG in there as well. But anyway, so
Mhm.
that's the updates on that. Enough about me because it's always about me. You're up, Big. Take it over on the
Yeah.
nerdery side of the house.
Thank you, sir. Today we're going to talk about Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan.
Sweet.
I'm going to say something real fucking controversial. This is probably the best science fiction film of the 1980s. Yeah, just wait for everybody to start yelling. I forgot. It's just the two of us.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you no. There's no way. There's not a chance in hell I'm putting this before Empire Strikes Back. Not a chance in
Yeah,
hell.
dude, this is way better than I put
No,
three movies before Empire Strikes Back. And Empire Strikes Back was the best Star Wars movie from the original trilogy.
not a chance. Not a chance. Wrath of Khan is great. Wrath of Khan is absolute greatness. My wife and I disagree on that. Her favorite is four. Um,
The
which
Whales?
four is a great movie. It's
Yeah,
fun.
great movie. Yeah.
But Wrath of Khan is the best. Wrath of Khan is 100% the best of the Star Trek movie franchises. Best sci-fi of the 80s? No, not a chance.
Yeah, yeah,
Not
easily.
a chance. Nope.
Easily.
Nope.
Easily. Wins
Nope.
hands down.
And the listeners agree with me already. I see them nodding their heads that they agree with
Do
me.
you? That's amazing.
Hmm.
So, Wrath of Khan starts with an episode of the original series called Space Seed. Space Seed is an episode of Star Trek. It is in the 20 it's the 22nd episode of the first season. It was first broadcast by NBC on February 16th, 1967. It was written by Gene Coon and Carrie Wilbur and directed by Mark Daniels. It's set in the 23rd century. The series follows the adventures of Captain James T. Kirk and his crew aboard the Starfleet starship USS Enterprise. The Enterprise crew in this episode encounters a sleeper ship holding genetically engineered super people from Earth's past. The leader, Khan Noonien Singh, played by adeptly by Ricardo Montalban, attempts to take control of Enterprise. The episode also guest stars Madeline Rue as Lieutenant Marla McGivers, who becomes romantically involved with Khan.
¿Qué es muy macho? Fernando Lames, Ricardo Montalban. Montalban.
Lames? No,
Lames? Montalban.
no,
Montalban.
is Montalban.
Sorry. Saturday Night Live skit.
Excuse me.
No worries.
Wilbur conceived the general plot for a different series, Captain Video and his Video Rangers. So that's how far back this one goes. That's from the early 50s, which featured humans from ancient Greece who were preserved in cryogenic suspension and revived. The script changed numerous times during pre-production, and producer Bob Justman felt that it would be too expensive to film. Eventually, Gene L. Coon and series creator Gene Roddenberry also made alterations. These revisions included the marooning of the criminals at the end of the episode and the change of the primary villain from a Nordic character to a Sikh. Roddenberry attempted to claim the primary writing credit for Space Seed, a request turned down by the Writers Guild of America. Montalban was the casting director's first choice for Khan and described the role as wonderful, despite being planned as an inexpensive bottle episode. The special sets and shots using Starship miniatures caused the episode to go over budget. On first broadcast, the episode held second place in the ratings for the first half hour with 13.12 million viewers. But during the second half, it was pushed into third place and has been named one of the best episodes of the series by Cinema Fastique, IGN, and other publications. The 1982 film Star Trek The Wrath of Khan serves as a sequel to this episode. Plot elements of this episode and The Wrath of Khan were also used in the 2013 film Star Trek Into Darkness, and reference to it appear in episodes of Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek Strange New Worlds. The USS Enterprise finds the USS Botany Bay adrift in space. A landing party consisting of Captain Kirk, Dr. Leonard McCoy, Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott, and historian Lieutenant Marla McGivers beam over to the derelict. The landing party finds a cargo of dozens of humans still alive in suspended animation after nearly 200 years. McGivers identifies the group's leader, who begins to revive and is taken back to the Enterprise for medical examination. Kirk has Botany Bay taken in tow by a tractor beam, and Enterprise sets course for Starbase 12. In sickbay, the group's leader awakens and introduces himself as Khan. McGivers marvels over Khan, a living relic of the 20th century. Her field of interest, First Officer Spock discovers their guest is actually Khan Noonien Singh, who, along with his people, are products of selective breeding designed to create the perfect humans. The genetic supermen instead became tyrants and conquered more than a third of the planet during the eugenics wars of the 1990s. They also started the Third World War in Star Trek canon. They had to go back and retcon this later on because in the original series in the 1990s, which they wrote back in the 50s and the 60s, um, the 1990s, these genetic supermen basically took over and started trying to take over the planet, and it was a mess. And instead of killing them, executing them, because at this point, the first seeds of a united Earth, Starfleet, and all that stuff kind of crop up from this period. This and the Bell riots coincided in time. Um, so in Star Trek canon, um, they decided they're going to put them on a sleeper ship and send them out into space, and eventually the sleeper ship will find a planet that they can land on, revive them, and they can live out their lives on another planet. Um, which is the Enterprise encounters this ship doing that very thing. It's out in interstellar space. It's been traveling for 200 years. Um, what they do is they basically put them back on the ship, land the ship on SETI Alpha 5 or SETI Alpha 6. SETI Alpha 5, SETI Alpha 6. Hold on.
There you go. So
One one planet blows
okay,
up.
hang on. Okay. So
I
here's the
just
key here's
watched this clip.
here's the key point you've missed that leads into the movie is Khan tries to take over the Enterprise, which
Yes.
is when they get the plan all gets foiled and Kirk decides to leave them on a planet they can survive on. It is
Yes.
SETI Alpha 5.
Yes.
The reason I know it's SETI Alpha 5 is because when you get to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Khan goes, uh,
SETI Alpha 6 exploded.
yes,
That's
this
what it
is
is.
SETI Alpha 5.
Yeah.
Or
Because
maybe I'm wrong on
later
that.
on in time, uh, a science survey vessel that is looking at SETI Alpha 6 for use in an experiment. What they don't realize is Alpha it's not SETI Alpha 6, it's actually SETI Alpha 5, which has moved in its orbit. I would say that's kind of a MacGuffin because when they're coming into when they're coming into a solar system, they can see all the planets.
Yeah, they
They
maroon
should have been able to go, "Hey, we're missing a planet here."
they maroon them on SETI Alpha 5,
Mhm.
which is a planet teeming with life,
Yeah.
but it becomes barren after the destruction of the neighboring planet SETI Alpha
Yes.
6.
Yes. Um, so Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, it's a 1982 American science fiction film directed by Nicholas Meyer and based on the television series Star Trek. It is the second film of the Star Trek series franchise following Star Trek The Motion Picture and its sequel to the television episode Space Seed. The plot features Admiral James T. Kirk and the crew of the starship USS Enterprise facing off against the genetically engineered tyrant Khan Noonien Sung, played by Ricardo Montalban. Khan escapes from a 15-year exile to exact revenge on Kirk, and the crew of the Enterprise must stop him from acquiring a powerful terraforming device named Genesis. The film is the beginning of a three-film story arc that continues with Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and concludes with Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Um, After the lackluster critical response to the first film, series creator Gene Roddenberry was forced out of the sequel's production. Executive producer Harv Bennett wrote the film's original outline, which Jack B. Sowards developed into a full script. Director Nicholas Myers completed its final script in 12 days without accepting a writing credit. Myers' approach evoked the swashbuckling atmosphere of the original series, referring to the film as Horatio Hornblower in space. Um, a theme reinforced by James Horner's musical score. Leonard Nimoy had not intended to have a role in the sequel, but was enticed back by the promise of his character would be given a dramatic death scene. Negative test audiences reacting to Spock's deaths led to significant revisions of the ending over Meyer's objections. The production team used various cost-cutting techniques to keep within budget, including using miniature models from past projects and reusing sets, effects, footage, and costumes from the first film. The film was the first feature film to contain a sequence created entirely with computer graphics.
So,
The computer graphics scene is the scene where they show how the Genesis device
right.
works.
So let me pause you there. For those of you that are listening to this show, if you're listening to this show with the idea behind, but with the idea that um, the topic that Zig has today, that you've never seen it and you're now going to go watch it because of what he says, spoilers, Spock dies. There you go. Done.
Yeah. Well, they end up it was released in
I
1982.
know. I know.
At this point,
I know they retconned it,
God,
but I
um,
was just giving that spoiler warning
a
for
little
anybody
spoiler.
who
Yeah.
has not watched this movie.
Um, so yeah, what they did was when they made the first film, they had all these really expensive effect shots, and the film didn't do really well. It did okay. It did enough for them to get a sequel, but they didn't get nearly as big of a budget. But they had all of these effect shots in the can, so they were able to reuse them. Um, they did change the costumes to be more of a naval theme. Um, Plus, they didn't look as 1970s in space, which is the original film looks like a disco in space. That's
Hmm.
not what they were going for. Um,
So, I don't know if I'm spoiling what's in your notes, but I'm going to ask. You said it didn't do very well in the theaters. I wasn't aware of that. I saw this in the theaters.
no,
Um,
this film did. It did better than the first one.
oh, okay. I misheard
Yes.
you because that actually leads me to my point. Why did they greenlight this after the disappointment of one?
Well, because the one didn't fail. It actually did some box office numbers,
Hmm.
but it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. It wasn't
Star Wars.
exactly. It wasn't Star Wars, which in
The reason
1977, Star Wars was in the theaters for a full year.
Right, right. The reason Star Trek the motion picture came out in the first place is because that started the revival of sci-fi at the movies.
Hmm.
And Paramount, was it Paramount at the time?
Yeah,
Whoever it was, Paramount,
yeah,
whatever.
it's Paramount.
Paramount decided, hey, let's ride this wave and bring back Star Trek because Star Trek got a neat little following behind it and they've
Yeah,
still got fans and whatnot.
yeah.
Let's
Star
try to
Trek actually
revive it.
became bigger after it was in syndication
Yes.
because it played in on in every market. There was a TV station that ran Star Trek
Yeah.
every day.
And so they tried to revive it, and the motion picture just didn't do it.
No, no, no. Again, it made enough monies. It made enough money for them to make a sequel. The critics didn't like it because it was slow. Originally, the Star Trek the Motion Picture was going to be a series called Star Trek Phase 2. That's where they got a lot of the costumes and stuff like that. So they were able to use those. And then all these big, expensive effect shots they added to them, which they again reused in Wrath of Khan. So when they're approaching the ship in space dock, that's all from the first movie.
Hmm.
Um, but again, it was an expensive effect, and they were able to reuse it. I think they've reused it a couple of times actually. Um, but so they get enough money to greenlight this second movie. They want to give it more of a naval theme, more of a. They actually do two starships doing broadsides at one point. Um, you get you also get the subplot of Kirk had an affair with a lady named well, not an affair. He had
Carol
a
Marcus.
romance with
Yep.
Carol Marcus. She had a son. That son is James T. Kirk's son,
Hmm.
David. Um, Kirk Kirk stayed away. Um, and David kind of hates him because he would come
Uh, that
around every so
that's
often.
that's not even kinda.
Yeah,
Not even kinda.
yeah. David hates him.
David absolutely. David not only hates him for being the father who was never there,
Hmm.
but because of what the Genesis device is about creation and whatnot, David sees Kirk as a warmonger.
Yeah. Yeah, he sees Kirk as a guy, a warmonger, and what he wants to do is,
Create,
yeah, create
not
life.
destroy,
Yeah,
and not
create life.
destroy. Yes.
Yeah, the thing was what they're working on, the Genesis device, basically, it reconstructs matter into living organisms. It's like a transporter, but instead of transporting a piece of rock, you take a piece of rock, you run it through the transporter, and the rock's covered in moss and life and whatever. That's basically what the Genesis device does.
Well, right. It's a planet. It's a single planet, complete terraformer
Yeah.
to make a single planet into an Earth-like state.
Yeah. But what you find out later on in the films is David took a shortcut using proto matter, which he was not supposed to do. You don't find that out until after this film.
Hmm.
And I, in my opinion, Buttrick, I can't remember that guy's first name. Buttrick.
The actor,
Yeah,
he was the
Buttrick.
guy. He was the guy from Square Pegs.
Yeah, yeah. His last name is Buttrick, but I can't remember his first name. Um, I have it in my notes here somewhere.
I can find it for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, I think he knew that. He knew that David, because he kind of David played shit close to his chest. And I really, really like the way he threaded the needle with that. Because you don't find that out until the next film that he kind of fucked shit up.
Merritt R. Buttrick.
Yeah, Merritt Buttrick. So, Kirk knows what the Genesis device is because he's an admiral. Uh, Nobody else does, right? So they're testing this Genesis device out. They're looking for a planet to test it on. That's when they run across Spock's people. Chekhov is with the USS Reliant, which is the ship that's assigned to the Marcuses to do planetary surveys so they can do this thing. What they're doing is they're sending the a crew out to double check to make sure there's no life on the planet. And so one of the planets they want to use is SETI Alpha 6.
Six.
6. This always confuses me. What they don't realize is it's not actually SETI Alpha 6, it's SETI Alpha 5, moved in orbit. Anyway, so they get there and they land and they discover the crew of the Botany Bay. Khan then, because again, they're all supermen, um, Khan then grabs Chekhov and his current captain, and he puts there's one living thing that survived.
City eel.
Yeah, it is it looks like a doodle bug. You know, the things that make the little hole in the sand. It's very evocative of that. It carries its babies on its back. They pull the babies off and they drop them into their helmets and put their helmets on, and these things go up into their ear. This is what freaked everybody out about this film, the Chekhov's ear. Because what happens, and Khan gives if you look at our YouTube playlist, you get to see the whole scene where Khan explains what these things do. What they do is they wrap around your cerebral cortex through your ear, and they make you very receptive to suggestion.
And
Eventually,
this
these things.
in this scene too, Ricardo Montalban in this scene is brilliantly
Oh my
scary.
God. Oh yeah.
Brilliantly scary.
Because he's trying to be nice and polite, but he's
Yes.
also fucking malevolent.
Yes.
He's
He is
so good in
he
this.
is he is menacing in the most polite way possible.
Oh yeah. Yeah, which makes it even scarier. Um
And
yeah,
by the
and
way,
right at the beginning. So Chekhov's wearing basically a spacesuit. It's got a handle on the front so you can take the chest piece and put it on over yourself, right? Khan grabs a hold of the handle and just picks him up. So he
um
sets that he is super strong in the first 30 seconds of their meeting.
and one little point as well, little point of trivia, because this was debated for years and it was finally let out. Ricardo Montalban in this is not wearing prosthetics. He got jacked for
Yeah, he
this
did.
role.
Well, also, he had to maintain a lot of upper body strength, um, because in the 1950s, maybe in the 60s, he did a film where he was he was got thrown off a horse and it fucked up his back.
Speaking of thrown off a horse, by the way, did you know, number one, that William Shatner is 94 years old?
Yes.
He was thrown from a horse and broke his shoulder,
Yeah.
and
Recently.
he's fully recovered.
Yeah.
94.
Yeah. This is um Montalban and Kirk are they bond over horsing. He's a Kirk or
You mean Shatner and Montalban?
Shatner and Montalban bonded
Yeah,
over horsing because they're
I'm
both
with you.
horse guys.
I'm with
But
you.
Shatner is he's been involved with cutting horses since the 80s.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you guys don't know what cutting horses is, it's a competition on basically using a horse to cut or direct other animals, i.e., cattle, into a herd.
Right.
Um, and he's been doing it competitively since the 80s. He's a big proponent of it. Um, and he's a hell of a horseman. But yeah, Montalban got thrown off, and his back got fucked up. So since it was the 50s and the 60s, they couldn't do anything about it other than like, if you don't want to hurt the rest of your life or take pills that knock you out for the rest of your life, you're gonna have to do a whole lot of upper body strength training. So that's what he did his whole life. And yeah, a lot of people think it's a chest piece. No, that's Ricardo Montalban's fucking abs because he has to or had to. Um, but yeah, he was in pain for most of his life after that incident. I can't remember exactly what it did, but it fucked up his back. I mean, like it was this close to paralyzing him. He got thrown bad. Um, but yeah, so he picks Chekhov up and establishes that. And he takes his mask off and he reveals himself as Khan. Well, everybody who had been familiar with the original series knew exactly who he was. But they kind of give it away. And again, I've got the scene in our YouTube playlist. It's about 10 minutes. You get to see the scene with the eel and the meeting Khan and as a matter of fact, I was watching it before we started recording. It's really good quality. Um, this is one of those films that makes the touring circuit. Fathom Entertainment, this is one of the films that they have the rights to show. So this will show up in your community in the theater once every few months. If you get a chance, go see it on the big screen because the naval battles themselves, almost like submarine warfare, where the two ships, the Reliant, which Khan has taken over, and the Enterprise, are basically hunting each other in the Mutara Nebula. It is amazing and wonderful and fabulous. Khan eventually takes over the Reliant ship and basically hunts Kirk. Now, the smart play would have been for Khan and his people to get on board the Reliant and go find a place to live other than SETI Alpha 5. That's not what Khan does. Khan hunts down Kirk like he's Moby Dick, like he's Captain Ahab hunting down Moby Dick. And it has that kind of feel to it, to the point of basically destroying his entire, I say crew, but they're his people. You know, instead of leading his people away and into paradise, he leads them into a war that he cannot win.
No, no, they're not his people. They are his family.
Yeah. Yes.
To Khan, they are his family.
Yeah, because they were what was left over from the eugenics wars, and then they got marooned on this planet, including the scientist from the original episode, and then most of them died when the planet shifted. So this is what's left, and they've been spent the last 15 years in this desert looking for food, water, shelter, whatever. It's rough, and you get in this film, even though this film's only like an hour and a half, you get all of this backstory. And it's not just someone standing telling you it. It's going on while these space battles are going on, while you see how the Genesis effect works. One of the things they do is they show the Genesis effect, which is where you get that computer generated ad, where they basically take a bird's eye view of a camera that goes over this planet that's been hit by this Genesis device, and it turns from a like a rocky moon into a planet with oceans and forests and everything else. They eventually, at the very end, they eventually launch the Genesis device at a planet in the Mutar Nebula, uh, and it terraforms it. The gets fucked up pretty early on because they don't raise their shields because the Reliant is another Federation ship. Um, this is the great scene where Savic's like, Captain, should I tell you about Order 12, Regulation 12, that we should raise our shields when we don't get confirmation? And they're like, Savick, don't. And the Reliant shoots at him, and Kirk gets up and is like, Savick, you keep quoting those regulations. I should have listened to you in the first place. Um, Savick is a Vulcan, a full Vulcan, who was in Starfleet. She was actually taking the Kobayashi Maru test at the opening scene of the film. The Kobayashi Maru is a test that they run um, for for people who are going into command in Starfleet to see how they handle a no-win situation. This is where you get the story that Kirk cheated on the Kobayashi Maru test, so he's never actually faced a no-win situation. Um, this is also a recurring thing that happens throughout this movie. People coming to him, it's like, buddy, you didn't face the no-win situation. We may be in one. What are you going to do? This
Which
all,
which regulation did you say?
I think I just watched it.
The
Something 12.
reason I ask because we have certain listeners out there that are screaming at the microphone right now because it's Starfleet General Order 15.
Starfleet General Order 15. You just looked it up.
I had to
I thought
look
it
it
was
up
12.
no, I had to look it up myself because when you said 12, something in my head went, no, no, no,
15.
that's wrong. No,
Special Order
that's wrong.
15. Yeah, yeah.
So I had to
Special Order
look it up.
15. Well, hey, whatever. The Special Order, she quotes it to
Yes.
him. And
Yes.
that also becomes a recurring theme in this film. That Kirk,
I'm just trying to prevent you from being yelled at by a listener.
yeah, thank you. This prevents the point I'm trying to make is this also becomes a recurring theme that Kirk has to overcome. The son he didn't raise, the life he could have had, the 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 fact that he never faced an unwinnable situation. Um, the fact that what he did with Khan, he should have followed up on them. He should have sent somebody out, if not himself, somebody to go, hey, they're here. We should go check up on them, see how they're doing. He didn't do any of that. He so it's also you also get a scene of Kirk's birthday where Bones is like, why do we have to treat your birthday like a fucking funeral? What everybody else has a birthday. It's fine. You know, it kind of portrays Kirk in a bit of a negative light, but I think they kind of needed that for this film because
So it portrays Kirk as exactly what he is, and this is what I personally appreciated about the reboot when Chris Pine took over
uh-huh.
is they took they took the Kirk from the original series
Hmm.
that people have made fun of it for years that he didn't act really well in the Star Trek original series. His acting was kind of over the top, and which
Yeah.
is which is what funny because when you go to Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Hmm.
I don't know if this was ever brought out as canon or not, but I remember before TNG came out, there was a rumor that Riker was in the lineage of Kirk somewhere.
Yeah, I think that was kind of one of the things. I don't think they actually did that,
Yeah, I
but
don't
yeah,
think they did either.
he stood in for the Kirk character.
Yeah, yes, yes. And that's exactly what I was bringing up. He stood in for the Kirk character, which I don't know if that's just Jonathan Frakes or if he did this intentionally as a callback to Kirk, but Jonathan Frakes would walk into scenes leading with his head.
Leading with his
He
forehead.
he
Yeah.
would open doors with his head.
He
So
opened
you,
imaginary doors with his forehead. Yes.
so you go back to the Kirk in the original. His acting was sometimes very cheesy, very over the top. But Captain Kirk was a whore, number one.
Yeah.
And he had a massive ego.
Hmm.
you really get to see how big of an ego when we get to Star Trek Wrath of Khan. And that's why I said why I appreciate Chris Pine's version of it as well, because you get to see it even more.
Yeah.
But that's just that's how Kirk is. Kirk has a massive ego and believes he's better than pretty much anybody else.
Yeah. He thinks other than Spock, he's the smartest guy in the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than Spock, he's the smartest guy in the room. And in a lot of cases, he's kind of right. Kirk is brilliant. Kirk is very, very smart. He's very tactically smart. He's also he also knows a lot of shit about a lot of shit. That's why they called him Book Stacks in Starfleet because he was always studying. The reason he has no personal life is when he's not captaining or swashbuckling, he's reading information. You don't get to see it a lot, but that's what he does. Um, which is why
Well,
he that's
and
why he has no personal life.
he bring well, except for all the women he's betting.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, but that's a that's an ends to a means.
he brings this up in Wrath of Khan that Keith and I have very much taken to heart for years is when playing a game, it's not knowing the rules,
Hmm.
it's knowing why the rules work.
Hmm.
And Kirk says this in Wrath of Khan. It's not about knowing uh how a starship works, but why it works.
Why it works.
Yes.
Why it works. Yeah. And to his credit, William Shatner kind of played that up. And I think he was better. I think he was better in this film than he was in any of the others. You know, he was a lot less boisterous. I guess is that a word? Or does that fit this what I'm trying to say? He was I don't want to say he was muted because he was still, he was still Shatner. But in this case, he Kirk wasn't a superhero in this. Kirk was a man who was
Kirk,
trying really hard to do the right thing.
Kirk was a man who was deeply flawed in this.
Yes. Yes.
Deeply flawed. Um, number one, he had no idea how to face death, which was the whole point of the Kobayashi Maru.
Hmm.
So he would sometimes act in ways not really truly thinking of what the final outcome could be
Hmm.
because he never had to face it.
Yeah,
And
he
and
always assumed there's a way to win.
and he says this line perfectly in Wrath of Khan when somebody, I think it may have been, was it Savick or was it Sulu or somebody? I don't remember who said it, but they said, "Sir, you did it." And he said, "I did nothing. I simply
Hmm.
got caught with my pants down."
Yeah, that's when he looks at Savick and says, Lieutenant Savick, you keep quoting those rules because he learned a very valuable lesson. Savick knew what the fuck she was talking about.
Yeah.
Um, so in the production, we'll get back to this a little bit because this is an interesting side note. Roddenberry was removed from the production and, according to William Shatner, kicked upstairs to the ceremonial position of executive consultant. Harv Bennett, a new Paramount television producer, was made producer for the next Star Trek film. According to Bennett, he was called in front of a group including Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner and asked if he thought he could make a better film than the motion picture, which Bennett confessed he found really boring. When Bennett replied in the affirmative, Charles uh, Bluedorn asked, "Can you make it for less than 45 fucking million dollars?" Bennett replied, "Where I come from, I can make 5 movies for that." So it was so it was Bennett's like, well, we already got all these shots. We could use that. Yeah, we're gonna need some new costuming, but like those new costumes for Rathacon, the undershirts that they were wearing were all the ones from the original, the first film. You
Hmm.
just can't see them because they got jackets over them. And it was just like we need a real villain, and he was like, well, we'll use the Space Seed character and Ricardo Montalban, even though he was doing Fantasy Island at the time, which was a huge hit. He was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do this. This sounds like fun." Although in the filming, he was kind of daunted at first because these people all had worked together for a long time. He was just like a day player originally, but like his birthday happened and like he showed up, with from hair and makeup and costume and walked in and they had it was like a little robot toy, like a little remote control toy with a blow up. It's got like a little blow up punching doll on it. And do you remember those?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They showed up with one of those with his face on it so he could punch it. And after that, he was part of the group. And they gave a birthday cake and everybody had cake and they got to doing the scenes of, he tasks me. Ricardo Montalban. So Shatner is playing a more subdued older Kirk, right? But he's still Shatner, right? Right. He's still got some of that Shatner in him. Ricardo Montalban goes in and it's just trying to go up over him just a hair, just not much, just a hair. And the way those two played off each other, never in person, right? It's all through view screens because again, they're two ships looking for each other in a nebula. And you get 3D combat, which Star Trek rarely ever does.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Matter of fact, the next time that we're really going to get good 3D combat, I think, is in
Six,
what is the name of six? Help me.
The
It's
Undiscovered Country.
the no, no. It's a next gen movie. But
Oh,
it's a next gen movie where basically they not only destroy the ship, but then the Enterprise comes up through the explosion,
oh,
and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's one of the TNG movies,
yeah.
I think. I don't know. Heath would know, and he's yelling at the podcast right now.
He's yelling at the podcast. Love you,
Probably
Keith.
he'd know.
Well, either way. Oh, is it with the Enterprise with a third nacelle? It's from the last TNG episode.
Maybe,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it from that one?
yeah.
Maybe.
All good things.
All good things.
Yeah,
Could be.
yeah.
Could
Where
be.
the Enterprise with that third nacelle on the back just comes up, goes through the explosion. Yeah,
I know it was TNG. That's all I know.
yeah.
That's all I remember.
Um. So, yeah. So they had less money, but they were able to make this film. And this film went like gangbusters. It did not play as long as Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. It wasn't in the theaters for a year, but it was in the theaters for a good 3, 4 months. It did really, really well, which allowed them to greenlight a third picture. Um, but because because Spock dying at the end, because what he does is he runs uh, into like an engine compartment that's flooded with radiation, closes the door and fixes it, um, and basically dies next to Kurt. Um, they retconned it because it tested really poorly with people, and they went to Leonard Nimoy and said, "Okay, here's the deal. You can direct the next film, but um, um, you have to come back as Spock." So that's what he did. Although in the third film, he's not really in it very much. Um, they then the next film, they agreed to let him direct that as well, but he had to come back as Spock. So 3 and 4, which all take place, Wrath of Khan, The Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home. All three of these films take place within about a year of each other because they're on Vulcan for a while. After 3, they decided to go back to Earth. But yeah, these 3 films basically all take place in a very, very short order. The next film, 5, takes place years later, as does 6. But yeah, these all three of these films take place in a very, very quick sequence. Um, it, it was almost like they were episodes, and they really got the production wing up and running because of this film. A production wing in Paramount Studios that ran until the end of Enterprise, because the same studio they used to make the films was the same studio space that they were using to make Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, and they used the same. I can't remember the studio, but it was like a whole studio area. They like had it for Star Trek, and then they used it for years and years and years. And they had all the costuming was there, all the models were there. They did the special effects there. It was basically in house on the Paramount lot. It was one of those big, giant Kwanzaa hut looking studios. Because in most cases, when you go into a studio, it's Studio 23B, which means you're in a section of that building. Star Trek had the whole fucking thing. But that didn't start until Wrath of Khan. And then from Wrath of Khan on, that's where they were until 2000 and when did Enterprise end? 2005, 2006, something like that. Yeah, something like that.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, yeah. So from like 19, because like they filmed it throughout 1981. It was released in 1982. So from 1981 to 2005, that was where Star Trek was made. And it's because of this film, and its popularity and how well it did compared to the budget that it had. Because he did go over budget. He couldn't make it for you know he couldn't make it for 5 million, but he definitely made it for a lot less than what was the quote? Can you make it less than 45 fucking $1 million? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I can. And there's all
Well,
this.
I'm not laughing at what you said.
What's that?
Okay. Um, Here we go. So again, I love AI. I love toying
Hmm.
around with AI. So as you were talking, I put into Chat GPT. Help settle a nerdery murdery debate Zig and I are having. What are the top three sci-fi movies of the 1980s? Not just money, but best, if you know what I mean.
Hmm.
The response, great debate topic for nerdery and murdery. The 1980s were arguably the best decade for sci-fi cinema.
Okay, I can agree with that.
So picking only three is brutal. If we're judging best by a mix of cultural impact, filmmaking quality, storytelling, and lasting influence, not just box office, these three almost always rise to the top. Here we go. Empire
Hmm.
Strikes Back,
Hmm.
Blade Runner,
Uh-huh.
Terminator. Um,
AI is fucking stupid.
hold, hold, please. If Zig pushes back, these are the movies people usually argue could also be in the top tier. Alien, Back to the Future, The Thing, RoboCop, and E.T. And it gave breakdowns why. Um, and it said why it's not the best sci-fi movie of the 80s compared to the true giants of the decades. It simply doesn't have the same cultural cinematic impact. Look at what it's competing with: Empire, Blade Runner, Terminator, Aliens, Back to the Future. Each of those changed the genre or industry. And then it went on to a few other things. The thing that made me laugh is the final verdict was Wrath of Khan might be the best Star Trek movie, but it's not the best science fiction movie of the 80s that gave us the Empire, Blade Runner, Terminator, and Alien. That's like arguing the best basketball player of the 90s was someone not named Jordan.
Spud Webb. Spud Webb.
Uh, no,
Yeah, Spud Webb.
no, no.
Spud Webb's only like
You,
five
you're
foot five.
I know,
He
but
could fly.
you're gonna lose that one. You're gonna lose that one big time.
Well, I mean,
Anyway, I just found that hysterical. Someone not
okay.
named Jordan.
All
That was
right. All
funny.
right.
And see, and I agree with that. I agree with that because I agree. Empire, Blade Runner, Terminator. I would agree with those as the top three of the 80s. I would.
Yeah.
I absolutely would. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is my favorite Star Trek movie. I think
Hmm.
it's a great science fiction movie, and I think it's brilliant. Number one of the 80s, not a chance.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely
Um,
number one of the 80s. Star Wars, it was a good film, but it's still Star Wars. The dialogue's still terrible. Um,
no,
Terminator, yes,
Empire changed that because you got to
the
remember
dialogue is still not good.
Lucas didn't write the dialogue for that one.
I I realize that, but the dialogue that it's still derivative of the dialogue he did. The dialogue is not nearly as good as the dialogue in this film. Secondly, the Terminator, like everything James Cameron ever did, is derivative of other work. In some cases, outright stealing. Um, and then you got, I will, you know what? I will give you Alien.
Aliens.
Aliens?
Yeah.
Okay, again, in my opinion, Alien and Aliens are the same story.
They are, but I will give the nod to Aliens because it was a better it was better cinematography. And granted, the special effects had increased
Yeah,
a few years,
yeah.
so it had benefit. But I think Aliens is the better movie than Alien. I actually watched Alien not too very long ago, and I didn't change my
Alien
mind.
is very claustrophobic.
Oh
I think
yeah,
that's why I like that film
oh yeah.
better than Aliens.
Well, an Alien is more horror than
Yeah,
sci-fi,
yeah,
whereas Aliens is more sci-fi than horror,
yeah.
even though they both have much. That's why I give them. Um,
Back to the Future. I mean, yeah, it's a good time travel flick, but it's a family film.
mhm. That doesn't
You know what I
make it not
mean?
a good sci-fi movie.
Yeah, I know, but I don't ever really see it as a sci-fi movie. It's a family film. It's a popcorn movie. I would say honestly. Oh wait, Black Hole was released in '79, so you can't really count
Correct.
that as an acting '80s film.
Correct.
Um, Tron never gets enough love. People are talking about that. Neither does Space Hunter: Adventure to the Forbidden Zone
Hmm.
or God, this is just off the top of my
We
head.
have covered Space Hunter on our show, by the way.
Yeah,
We've never covered Tron.
we should.
We probably need to do an episode because we have three now. We have Tron, Tron Legacy, and Tron Ares. Is
Yeah,
that
we
the?
could probably do a Tron episode.
I haven't watched Ares yet.
Um,
Um,
oh, what's that other one? The Last Starfight. We've covered the Last Starfight.
we have covered the last Starfighter.
That was a great science fiction movie.
But I think this is one honestly I really want to hear from the fans on because I want to hear that I'm right and you're not. But I want to hear from the fans on this. Please do send us something on this and let us know what you think the best sci-fi movie of the 80s are. I'm curious if anybody doesn't say Empire Strikes Back besides you.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, again, it is the best Star Wars film. Well, no, Rogue One is the best Star Wars film. But from the original trilogy, it was the best because George Lucas didn't write as much dialogue in it, and George Lucas's dialogue is terrible. We all agree
Well,
he's not a good dialogue writer.
number one, okay, number one, he didn't write
That's
as
not his
much.
strength.
No, number one, he didn't write as much dialogue. He also wasn't the lead in this one. He was the creative consultant behind
Yeah,
everything and the vision. Kazdan was the lead on this.
Lawrence Kasdan.
Yes.
Yeah, who
Uh,
is really great at writing dialogue, even though
yeah.
his dialogues
Hello,
is
Silverado.
yeah, Silverado. Yeah, but he also did like what the Big Chill.
It's considered a
Yeah,
classic.
yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like the
It's
Big Chill.
the Big Chill to me is just baby boomer masturbation.
It is. It is. Yeah. No,
Um,
you're absolutely correct.
um, but yeah, it's George Lucas is an incredible world builder. I would never take that away from him at all. Um, and I honestly I like some of his. Well, I say some of it. He only made one film that was uber sci-fi, and that was THX
THX
113.
1138. Yeah.
Yeah, which is incredible. If you've never seen it, watch it. It is dark. It it has it has a Logan's Run feel to it,
Hmm.
but way more intense.
Hmm.
It's like you took Logan's Run and crossed it with a Clockwork Orange. You know, you just melded those two things, and it's and he filmed it in the BART system, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, before it went online. So he's in all these abandoned tunnels that are gleaming and white because they're brand new. They haven't used them yet. Um, just amazing, amazing. But never got any play. Although THX 1138 comes up a lot in his pictures after that. But I liked American Graffiti too. Honestly, I think the best dialogue he ever wrote was for American Graffiti. Um, but yeah, I'm sorry. We're on a what is the best science fiction? The 1980s were great for sci-fi movies. Not for sci-fi television, because if you got sci-fi television, it didn't last very long, except toward the end. We got like Star Trek: The Next Generation, what, like 87? Um, but like we would get a sci-fi show on television in the 80s, and then it would quickly go away. So it was kind of sad. But as far as films goes, one summer you'd get three or four really good ones, and then the next summer you'd get three or four more really good ones. And some of them were more family oriented, some of them were more horror oriented. Horror also kind of took off in the 80s as well. Some of them went straight to video, and in some cases, I don't know why. I still say my favorite science, and I'm not saying it's the best. My favorite science fiction show from the 1980s that gets no love is Hardware. And it's a little independent film. It's very cyberpunk, um, and it's very 1990s, even though it was released in 1989. Um, but yeah, we talked in circles. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, very honestly, you just argued that Spud Webb was better than Michael Jordan. So at this point, the debate is over. We might as well move on to the murdery.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know. Well, Spud Webb did some incredible things because he could fly. And again, I don't give a
Jordan,
shit. I don't give a shit about basketball.
I don't either.
I don't give a shit about basketball.
I don't either.
Honestly, I'm not a big fan of sports at all. Unless I'm at the event, I don't understand why people like it. You know what I mean? Unless you're there watching it, which is amazing, but it doesn't matter what sporting event it is. It's just amazing to watch. But like, people doing brackets and all this other stuff I don't, it's just, ugh. It's like people are into sports because they're supposed to be into sports. You know what I mean?
That's not true. That's absolutely not true. Mike Shanks will debate that with you all day long. We like
Mhm.
football because we like football, not just because we're supposed to. I like football. I like watching football. I like watching baseball. I like watching my Texas Rangers. Um,
Again, I'm not skirting going to like a live athletic competition
oh
is
no, no, no,
amazing to
no!
see.
I can watch it on TV, and I'm
Oh,
perfectly happy watching
ugh.
it on TV.
That's like
Crying,
people watching golf on TV. It's like, really? Watch the paint dry.
I watch golf on TV. I
I'm
like
sorry.
watching golf. If you're if you're into golf, watching golf on TV is a lot of fun because it's very interesting watching these pros do things you just can't do. And that's kind of part of it with sports. It's really cool watching these athletes that can do things you can't do. And strategy that can become involved in it. 'Cause there's strategy in golf too. With where you put the ball, how how you approach everything like that. But those of us who are sports fan, we in general, we don't watch it because we're just supposed to. We watch it because we like it. I don't watch shit because I'm supposed to watch it. I am a grown ass man. I don't
You
watch
watch what you
shit.
want.
I don't watch shit because I'm supposed to watch it. Um, and that's how I am with sport. But way beyond sport, because we were talking about Rathacon. Um, Rathacon. Rathacon is a great movie. It really, really is. I love Rathacon. It's somewhere within the last 3 years, I think, I went from start to finish on all the Star Trek movies from yeah, from OG all the way through.
Mhm.
And Rathacon is undoubtedly the best. Uh, Star Trek Beyond Darkness, is that Star Trek 2 Beyond Darkness?
Yes. Yes.
That's a good one. It
Yeah.
really is. There are purists that hate it because of what they did with Khan. They
Yeah.
changed him up a little bit. I personally I just think it was somebody else that kind of retold a cool concept,
Hmm.
which is why I like it. But Wrath of Khan is a very good movie. It's a very good movie. Regardless of whether you're on Zig's side or my side on what the best sci-fi movie of the 80s is, Star Trek 2 is a very good science fiction movie
Yes, it
and
is.
well worth a
I,
watch.
I would recommend seeing it on the big screen if you get a chance.
Absolutely. They do
It's
that from time to time too.
yeah, yeah. Every couple of months, that Fathom Entertainment will run it, and everybody's got like one of those little theaters in their little area. It's one of those. They'll do a bunch of Studio Ghibli films. They'll do some Broadway stuff that they filmed, and then they'll do like Wrath of Khan or Return of the Jedi or something like that.
Hmm.
Wrath of the Khan, when it shows up, go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a very good movie. It
Hmm.
is 100% well worth a watch. And then, I mean, if you're going to continue on this path and you're going to watch the movie, if you've never watched the movies and you're going to watch them as we're talking about here, understand when we get to three, which I'm not going to spoil it. I'll wait till our conversation on three. But three, Star Trek three, I'm not even going to give the name. Star Trek three was a, uh-oh,
Yeah, it was a retcon.
we got to make up for two, um, in order to get further,
Yeah,
in order to keep going. And the reason they had to do that was Zig said at the very beginning, Wrath of Khan was a massive success in the theaters,
huge,
huge,
huge.
and the way it ended, they had to do a lot of retconning, and let's be honest, going and begging someone, please come back.
Will they let him
Um,
direct? They
yes. Uh,
let him direct the next two.
and so the next one isn't near the great giant sci-fi that Wrath of Khan is, but it was a needed transition in order for them to carry into the future. I'll say that about that. This is that about that. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Yeah, well, it is a great ending. It
Yes.
is a really, really great ending.
Beautiful one. Beautiful
Hmm.
one. Um, so yeah, that's our stuff about that. Go watch that. It's a good one. I love going down these chronological paths as we have. We've done it with Doctor Who. We've done it with Star Wars. We've done it with Star Trek.
Oh, we just started
Um,
Planet of the Apes recently.
Planet of
We're
the
doing those
Apes.
too.
That's another one. I love these chronology ones where you've got a series of movies, and so far great. So appreciate that, Zig.
Thank you.
Oh, let's see, where are you? I guess with that, we will step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off the FBI website, the New Georgia Encyclopedia, biography.com, history.com, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Smithsonian Magazine, PBS, New York Times, and CNN. And this is the story of Wayne Williams.
Wayne William
This is
Williams.
Wayne
Sorry.
Williams. No, no, you're fine. This is another one in our long journey that I started, the A to Z walk across America's serial killers. I'm doing this one state at a time, one case at a time. As I've said before, I'm not trying to sensationalize violence at all. I'm not trying to glorify the killers, but just to give how these stories unfold and how the patterns begin, how warnings appear. And really, as we've seen several times, how often those warnings are missed until it's far too late. And every stop along the way has really shown us kind of different. We were in Alaska where isolation created the perfect environment for violence to hide. In Alabama, it was ideology twisted belief that turned into something far darker. Arizona reminded us how time and silence can bury justice for decades. Arkansas showed how hesitation can keep patterns from being recognized. California had us confront what happens when victims on the margins are ignored. Colorado revealed the dangers of documented threats that still fail to stop a killer. From there, we moved east. We went to Delaware, which we actually skipped because we did in an earlier episode. Not because
Hmm.
there wasn't a story there, but because we already covered the state's only true serial killer way
Yeah.
back in episode 101. Had to backtrack again. We went to Connecticut. That brought us Michael Ross. That was a case that forced the state to confront capital punishment, the legacy of serial violence. And then in Florida, we had Gary Ray Bowles, who showed us the terrifying mobility of a killer moving from state to state, leaving bodies behind him. So that brings us to today's stop, Georgia. This is the case it's really kind of almost unlike anything we've covered before because this is not just the story of a serial killer. This is the story of a city in fear. There were children that were disappearing. There was a community that was demanding answers. And there was a man whose name is still tied to one of the most controversial investigations in American criminal history. So today we are in Georgia talking about Wayne Williams. Um, Atlanta today is some people often say it's the it's describe it as the capital of the modern South. It's a big
Holy crap,
city.
this is the guy from Mindhunters.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
all
sir.
right.
It's often described as the capital city of the modern South, which is very true. It's a booming city. It's a cultural hub, and it's a place that proudly calls it the city too busy to hate. It is a busy city. But in the late 1970s, Atlanta was going through a very complicated moment in history. The city had become a symbol of Black political power in the South. It had elected Black leadership. It had a thriving Black middle class neighborhood, it had thriving Black middle class neighborhood. And it had really positioned itself as a model of racial progress compared to other Southern cities. Problem was,
Compared
but
to other cities in America in general.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and the problem was beneath that image of progress, Atlanta was still struggling with many of the same problems that were facing cities across America: economic inequality, neighborhood segregation, and growing tension between communities and law enforcement. So by 1979, those tensions would be pushed to the breaking point because that was the year children started disappearing. At first, there wasn't a pattern anybody was going to see. There was one child gone here, another week later, another somewhere else, and it was in different neighborhoods, different circumstances. But there was something investigators slowly began to realize. The victims were almost all Black children and teenagers, and many of them came from Atlanta's poorest neighborhoods. What that meant was early on, some of these disappearances didn't get the attention they deserved, or not the immediate attention anyway. Families reported the missing children and police opened investigations. But for a while, each case was treated as its own tragedy rather than part of something larger. We've seen this so many times as we've covered these, especially pre 1990s. You saw this where they invest law enforcement just wasn't talking to each other. Then the bodies started appearing. There were some found in wooded areas, some near abandoned buildings, some near rivers or creeks. And this is really when a very terrifying question began to form: was someone hunting Atlanta's children? Um,
And kids, if you've never been to Atlanta, it is very forested just outside the city. Even today, it was more so in the 70s. But yeah, if you've never been to Atlanta, there's a lot of woods out there.
oh yeah, yeah. The first victim most investigators connect was Edward Hope Smith, who was just 14 years old. And in July of 79, he left home to go to a local grocery store, but never came back. A few days later, his body was found in a wooded area, and he had been shot with a 22 caliber weapon. It was only 4 days later, and another boy disappeared, and this was Alfred Evans, age 13. His body was discovered near an abandoned building, also shot with a 22. So we had two murdered boys 4 days apart, both Black, both teenagers, and both killed in the same city. And this is investigators actually asked the question: was this a coincidence or was something much worse beginning? Over the next several months, the disappearances continued. There were children, teenagers, young men. Some vanished walking to the store, some while running errands for their parents, while others were simply walking through their neighborhood. And then more bodies started showing up. By 1980, the number of victims had grown so large that it couldn't be ignored anymore. Parents had begun forming search groups, community leaders demanded answers, and the media began reporting on something they now called the Atlanta child murders. So fear was spreading across the city at this point. Parents stopped letting their children walk alone. Schools warned students not to talk to strangers, and curfews were imposed in some neighborhoods. They just wanted simple answers to questions: who was doing this and why were the victims almost always Black children? So the Atlanta Police Department suddenly found themselves under enormous pressure. They were now investigating multiple murders that were possibly connected, but they had very little physical evidence. There was no clear suspect, no clear motive, and very few witnesses. This would bring the FBI to become involved, and hundreds of investigators would pour into this case. Thousands of interviews would be conducted, but the killer continued. So this is where we come to Wayne Bertram Williams. But before we really dig into him, kind of let's talk about the investigation a little bit because the way the case unfolded eventually became almost as controversial as the crime itself. By the time 1980 arrived, Atlanta, again, as we talked about, they were no longer dealing with isolated tragedies. This was a pattern of disappearances. Most of them vanished doing perfectly ordinary things, and in most cases, they were never seen alive again. They were being found in wooded areas, vacant lots, abandoned buildings, along riverbanks. Some had been strangled, some suffocated, others showed signs of blunt force trauma. The methods were not always identical, but the victims shared something very important. They were almost all young black male. So by the spring of 1980, Atlanta realized that they were dealing with something very unprecedented. Um, Neighborhoods organized volunteer patrols, and community groups started escort programs to help kids get to school safely because fear was everywhere and the pressure on law enforcement was huge. Atlanta police were soon overwhelmed with the growing number of cases, and so a massive task force was formed by local police, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and eventually the FBI. And at its peak, they had a ton of investigators working full time on the case. There were some witnesses who reported suspicious cars, but others described strangers offering children money for small jobs. There were rumors of trafficking rings. There was rumors of cult activity. There was rumors of multiple killers. But the problem was nothing led to a clear suspect, and the bodies kept appearing. By early 1981, investigators believed that as many as 24 victims might be connected, and whoever was responsible was still out there. But what investigators began noticing about where many of the victims were found is that several of the bodies had been discovered in rivers or creeks, most notably the Chattahoochee River. So this raised a very important possibility. What if the killer was dumping bodies from bridges? So they decided to do something new. They set up stakeouts on bridges throughout Atlanta. They quietly monitored traffic during the late night and early morning hours with one simple hope in mind. If the killer was disposing of bodies in a river, maybe they could catch him in the act. For weeks, nothing happened. But then in the early morning hours of May 22nd, 1981, something unusual occurred. At 2:50 a.m., officers that were stationed near the James Jackson Parkway Bridge heard something, and it was a loud splash coming from the river below. Officers were there on seconds to investigate, and when they approached, they saw a car slowly driving away from the area, which was a white 1970 Chevrolet station wagon. Police pulled the vehicle over, and behind the wheel was 23-year-old Wayne Williams. Williams told officers he'd been on his way to meet a woman for a late night audition. He said he was a music promoter and a talent scout. And according to Williams, he was trying to discover new singers, but the explanation immediately raised questions, which is the obvious one. What singer schedules an audition at 3 in the morning? Williams insisted the meeting had been arranged earlier, but he couldn't produce the woman's phone number, and so the story felt strange. But at that moment, officers had no evidence linking him to any crime, so they questioned him briefly. They let him go, but they did write down his name and they remembered the car. 3 days after the traffic stop, investigators would make another discovery, and that was the body of Nathaniel Cater, who was a 27-year-old man floating in the Chattahoochee River, same bridge where Wayne Williams had been stopped. Cater had been asphyxiated, and now this traffic stop seemed very important. So investigators went back to their notes to see the man they stopped, station wagon, the odd story. They decided they needed to look more closely at Wayne Williams because investigators now had to ask a very chilling question: had they just pulled over the killer? So after the body was pulled from the Chattahoochee River, investigators returned to Wayne Williams, and he presented himself as someone trying to help the investigation. He spoke to the police. He talked about his work in music. He described himself as a talent scout who helped young performers break in the industry. But as investigators looked into his story, very little of it seemed to add up. He claimed he was constantly meeting aspiring singers and performers, yet many of the people he named either didn't exist or had never actually worked with him. His supposed music business appeared to be more aspiration than reality. But investigators weren't just interested in his story, they were interested in evidence. So they began a deeper investigation into William's home and his car, and that's when things got interesting. Forensics investigators began looking at fibers that were found on several of the victims. There were tiny threads that came from clothing, carpentry, and upholstery. Fiber is normally not enough to convict someone, but it can point towards someone. In this case, investigators believe the fibers were pointing to Williams. Some of the fibers found on the victims matched green carpet fibers and bedspread fibers and fibers from a car interior. When investigators had searched Wayne Williams' home, they found carpet inside of his house that contained the fibers consistent with what was found on several victims. The bedspread in his house produced fibers that seemed to match the evidence on victims. And inside his station wagon, investigators found fibers similar to those recovered on multiple bodies. Again, any of those on its own matches might not have meant much. Wow. But taken together, prosecutors thought they were seeing a pattern. The victims all connected to the same fibers. Fibers connected to Wayne Williams' home and his car. That wasn't the only other forensics clue. Wayne Williams' family owned a dog. It was a German Shepherd named Sheba, and investigators found dog hairs on at least one of the victims. Those hairs were examined and compared. And at the time, forensic scientists believed those hairs were consistent with ones coming from Sheba. Today, hair comparison is not always as definitive as investigators once believed. We've talked about this in previous episodes, but in the 1980s, this was the kind of forensic evidence that carried enormous weight. Between the fibers and the dog hair evidence, investigators felt they had something powerful, but there was still a problem. Most of the victims were children, and the evidence tying Wayne Williams directly to those children was far weaker. So prosecutors made a strategic decision. Instead of charging Williams with every murder investigation that they believed he was responsible for, they focused on two adult victims, Nathaniel Carter and Jimmy Ray Payne, who was a 21-year-old man whose body had been discovered earlier. Both of these victims were young black men, and both had been strangled or asphyxiated, and both had fiber evidence linking them to Williams' home and vehicle. So by focusing on those two cases, prosecutors believed they had their strongest evidence. But they also did something else during trial. This was smart. They introduced evidence from many of the child murders, not as formal charges, but as pattern evidence. That's a smart move. Their argument was simple. Wayne Williams might only be on trial for two murders, but the evidence suggested a much larger pattern. The trial itself began in 1982 and lasted nearly 2 months. Prosecutors laid out the forensic evidence, the fiber of the dog hairs, the suspicious stop on the bridge. The defense attacked that evidence at every step. They argued the fibers were not unique. They questioned the reliability of hair analysis, and they suggested investigators had become so desperate to solve the murders that they focused on the wrong man. But after weeks of testimony, the case went to jury, and it didn't take long. In February of 82, Wayne Williams was found guilty of the murders of Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Carter, sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. And after that conviction, investigators made a controversial decision. They officially attributed more than 20 additional murders to Wayne Williams, even though he was never tried for them. To this day, the Atlanta child murders remains one of the most debated criminal cases in American history. Some investigators believe the evidence overwhelmingly proved Wayne Williams was responsible for many of the killings, but others argue that the case was far more complicated. Some family of the victims still believe the real killer or killers were never fully identified, and for years there have been renewed calls to re-examine the evidence using modern DNA technology, because really, when you've got a case that involves dozens of victims, unanswered questions kind of linger. And really in Atlanta, those questions have never fully disappeared. Wayne Williams has spent more than 4 decades in prison. He has always maintained the same position that he is not responsible for the Atlanta child murders. And even though he was convicted of killing 2 adult men, really the larger question has never gone away. What about the children? Investigators ultimately attributed more than 20 murders to Wayne Williams, as I said, but legally he was never tried for those cases. And that's really where families are left with the lingering sense that the story was never completely resolved. Some investigators who worked the case remain convinced they caught the right man. They point to all the evidence and the fact that once Wayne Williams was arrested, the killing stopped.
Well, and
Um,
I was just looking up some stuff. It looks like every time they go back to test some DNA, it comes up Williams. I
yeah,
mean, like not
yeah,
100%, but it's like, yeah, it's probably this guy. Hey, the
right.
the dog DNA matches the dog.
Yeah. And so they may end up retrying him at some point. I mean, he's going to be buried under the jail, but
Yeah.
another controversy though is some critics have argued the investigation was under too much pressure to produce a suspect because Atlanta was in fear.
Hmm.
Parents were terrified, the national media was watching, and police were forced into answers. So there are still some that suggest that they focused on Wayne Williams too quickly once he was on their radar.
Hmm.
Others believe there may have been more than one killer operating at the time. And over the years, advances in forensic science have
Yeah.
added more to this, like you were saying. In 2019, the Atlanta PD announced it would reopen parts of the case and they were going to re examine physical evidence using modern DNA that did not exist in 82. Um, but they still don't have definitive today, even with the DNA.
Yeah.
And I think part of that may be some of the DNA has degraded
Hmm.
because one of the things about DNA, and I've talked about this in the episode before, you can only test DNA so many times before it's done. And there was a case we covered that they were literally on their last piece of DNA they
Yeah,
could
it's the
use,
last bit they could use.
and that's what they use. So you got to be very careful with that. They can't just test and test and test and test and test because it destroys the DNA in the
Yeah.
test. It
And
destroys the sample.
if the hair file if the blood or semen or hair or whatever is not stored properly, i.e., away from ultraviolet light, that can also destroy DNA.
Yeah,
That you or
absolutely,
you get a sample that you can't use
absolutely.
if it's not in a dark place.
So the DNA has still not definitively done it, which leaves families still waiting for answers because they have a lot of questions that are still largely unresolved. And what that's going to mean is, or what that means today, is the Atlanta child murders remain still one of the most haunting criminal cases in American history. Dozens of victims, a city that was gripped by fear, and a verdict 40 years later still
Yeah.
sparks debate. Um, so that's the case of Wayne Williams and the Atlanta child murders. He was convicted for two murders. More than 20 additional were attributed to him, and there's still a debate going on. But that's going to close our chapter on Georgia. Our A to Z journey across America is not done yet. We're going to keep in that, and I'm trying to keep alphabetically correct this time. But the next week or next time when we come back to this, I can't remember if I did next week. But anyway, don't own my own notes at this point. The next A to Z, we're going to go west. We're going to go way west. Our next stop will be in Hawaii.
Hawaii. That's
And
right.
that is
It's H.
the story of Wayne Williams and my murdery for this week.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thanks for sticking with me on that. That's a yeah. I knew that was in Manhunter as well. It's a good one.
Yeah.
When I looked at the possibilities for serial killers in Georgia, I actually had several options, and I went, yeah, no, it's going to be this one.
Yeah, let's do the
This is
Atlanta
this
child murders.
yeah, this is the one I'm going to do.
Yeah, that was amazing.
So, that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub, that's our website. You'll see things about the things that we talk about. You'll get various links to our YouTube page. There's also a couple of links to my book, my upcoming book. When Zig is ready to publish Fire Sign Chronicles, I'll put a link to his as well. I've also got a couple of links to our music. So do check that
Yay.
out. But I appreciate all the work you do every week on YouTube and TikTok and all that.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I definitely check out the YouTube links here because I've got some of those really, really great scenes that we were talking about. Um, Especially the meeting Khan, put the thing in the ear. Brilliant.
Yep, I appreciate that. Matter of fact, I need to plaster a sign on our website that says Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is not the best sci-fi movie of the '80s, but bygones, I continue.
You're
Uh,
insane.
You'll also find a link to our merchandise page, or if you wish to show off your nerdery and murdery fandom, please do consider something from there. And let's say, let's say something about that. I say this all the time, but it's so true. Wearing nerdery and murdery out in public and showing people you're a fan, let's face it, you look damn good in it anyway.
Damn good.
Damn good. You can also find the link to our Patreon if you wish to become a patron of our show and get episodes as soon as they're available and not have to wait weeks and weeks. You can become a patron for a relatively low cost. It helps us with our merch from our merchandise and our patron. It helps with the costs that are associated with the show. There are costs for our uploads, for our storage, for our website, and everything that goes into bringing this to you each and every week. We do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. The other thing you can do that's completely free and only takes a minute or two of your time is to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. That helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information we discussed. And last, but certainly not least, as we talked at the beginning of the show, you can go to sleep now, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck. With that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey with your murdering.
Cue the music.